Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strangeness of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unseen Paranormal. I'm your host as usual, Eric. And thank y'all for tuning in today. We have a great guest, Mr. Shane Corson, going to chat about some Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and the Olympic project out on the West Coast. But before then, let's have a little chat about just self-esteem and how we all get down on ourselves sometimes for maybe not living up to our own example, but we let other people talk us down and make us think that we're lesser. And sometimes we listen, and we're all guilty of that. I try to be a very happy-go-lucky person. I have my struggles like everybody else. I'm a fat kid. I wish I wasn't. Struggled with weight my entire life. So, little self-esteem issues there as well. But I also have a husband of almost 19 years who loves me for exactly the way I am. And I love him for exactly the way he is. So, on that front, everything's good. I'm not trying to go out and get a date or anything like that. But trying to be healthy because I'm diabetic. And, of course, I got high blood pressure, but it's all genetic bullshit, the wonderful genetic lottery. But with self-esteem, I try to subscribe to the whole thing of, especially when it comes to other people, what other people think of me is none of my business. As long as I'm putting good things out in the world and trying to be a good person, what other people think of me is none of my business. Because you're going to be different to every person that you meet. They're going to see you differently. Because they're going to see you through rose-colored glasses of other people they've experienced in life. And they're only going to get a lot of people, most people in your life are only going to get a small snippet of you. Most people you come across. They're not going to know you in depthly like your friends and your family do, and people that you're around all the time that know you and get to know you. And so, not all people are going to have a good opinion of you. Maybe you were having a bad day that day and you only met that person for 5 minutes. Well, they might have a bad opinion of you because you're an asshole, because you're having a bad day. Not that you meant to be an asshole. And so, and then you come with social media. And social media, people control you. You got these keyboard warriors, these, couch quarterbacks who try to put their lives out there and make it look perfect all the time, and that everything's all hunky-dory. And, those people, they have some of the worst self-esteem and some of the most messy lives of anybody else out there. So don't listen to people on the internet, and don't believe that little Susie there, her life is perfect because every picture she puts up is fucking sunshine and roses, because I guarantee you it's not. We are all the same. We all have our same struggles. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, fat, skinny. Skinny people want to be bigger people want to be skinny. So, it's always that way. We always want things that we don't have. So try every day to be happy with who you are, because you're worth something in this world, and there are people that give a shit about you, even though sometimes it seems like there's not. And don't ever let anybody take up your headspace to make you feel bad about yourself or to piss you off. You're the one that gives them the power to do that. And when you let somebody put you down and make you feel bad about yourself, that's all up to you, not them. And so just want to put it out there because I've been thinking about my weight lately and kind of being down on myself about it. And yeah, I need to get back to exercising, but I'm also a hermit in the winter. So I hate getting out in the cold. And in the summer, I like to be active. I'm out, going to the park, walking around, and I'm a rock hound. And I would like to go walk up and down the river and find cool rocks and geodes and things like that. And even kayaking and things like that. But in the wintertime, man, I always gain weight because I hate the cold. And I just tend to be a hermit and stay in the house, and, in here in the studio working on things for y'all and being creative and things like that. So anyway, that's my rant for the day. Don't let anybody else tell you what your self-worth is. You are worth a lot to a lot of people. So anyway, let's get to this week's episode with Mr. Shane Corson. Y'all enjoy. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. All right. Hey, Shane, thanks for coming on the show and joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure, Eric. Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah. I don't know why I haven't had you on before. because I've been interested in the Olympic project, and I've talked to a few people, and like I was telling you, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but you're kind of knee deep in the Olympic project, and so with Sasquatch and Bigfoot research. So I wanted to get you on and talk about the Olympic project. But first, I want to talk about how did you get into being interested in Bigfoot to get into like knee deep investigating it all the time?
Yeah, I'll give you the kind of short version. But I'm originally from Scotland. I was born in Scotland, Glasgow, Scotland. I lived on a little island off the west coast of Scotland. And then growing up, my mom got me interested in paleontology and cryptozoology. Paleontology, I was enamored with dinosaurs. So I read all about dinosaurs and whatnot. And then cryptozoology, my mom, would get me, some books, and I'd watch every little program I could, and was very interested in, obviously, being from Scotland, the Loch Ness Monster, and some of the other water cryptids in and around Scotland. And then, I'm definitely interested in, things like the Yeti and the Sasquatch and the Mapimori and Mokele-Mbembe and all these different cryptids around the world. People are seeing these things. But I always had a huge fascination with Sasquatch. And when we moved to California in 93, I was about 13 years old. I was really excited because now I'm in California. Patterson-Gimlin, the film from 1967, was in Northern California. And I was, so I started really getting into the subject matter as far as reading more material. I had bigger libraries over here compared to where I'm from. And so I could get more books and watch more programs. And it wasn't until about 97 when I got my set of wheels, I could drive around, that I actually started getting out and, doing mini investigations and doing camping, exploring out in these areas, Southern California and Northern California, specifically, like the San Bernardino area, the Sierras, Los Angeles, Cleveland National Forest, Los Angeles National Forest, and then eventually making my way quite a way up north and falling in love with Yosemite. And that's really where I kind of really got my love for not just Sasquatch research, but just the outdoors. I've always loved the outdoors, but camping and exploring the Yosemite backcountry was a highlight. And though at that time, all those years that I was kind of interested in, I never really found anything of interest. I'll say that I could scream Sasquatch. 97 through 2006, I was doing a lot of driving, a lot of camping. I did talk to some witnesses, individuals, but I was kind of a solo investigator, if I even call myself that at that point. But it was definitely, the wheels were going. I'm getting into this. I'm looking for tracks. I'm trying to find witnesses. I'm going to historical areas of reports. I'm documenting things. But it wasn't until I eventually moved up to Oregon in 2008 that I really, really heavily got involved in this research.
Yeah, and kind of the culture up that way is a lot of Bigfoot stuff is branded Bigfoot, and you got statues, and it's just kind of part of that culture.
Absolutely. I would say Northern California, it's quite, they got some museums up that way. There's, even down there in Northern California, they got statues and a history of Sasquatch reports. And again, in Oregon, and it doubles. And the same thing with Washington, it almost triples. And then, keep going further north into Canada, it's the same.
Yeah.
Northern Idaho, even parts of Montana. But the Pacific Northwest has a rich history and there's barely a town, especially a small town, you can go into and not see a statue or a mural or some evidence of Sasquatch and, being in a part of the community, put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is I don't know if you know about this, but I'm interested in the native culture of it. Cause I know here in Tennessee, the Cherokee and the Shawnee that settled around here, they just kind of thought of Sasquatch as it's just another being. We live along beside it. We kind of leave it alone. It leaves us alone. And they just, believe that it was just another, part of nature, and just believe it was, it wasn't something supernatural. And then we also had the Tennessee wild man back in the 1800s, where there's serious news stories of the Tennessee wild man will come snatch up your children and your wife if they're out after dark type thing. So what kind of back in the history in that area, with the Native Americans and stuff, what kind of folklore is up that way?
Oh yeah, it's very similar up here in the Pacific Northwest when it comes to Sasquatch. Most of the, even Canada, First Nations, and the Native Americans here, they fully accept Sasquatch as a real entity. Um, though some do have kind of more of a spiritual aspect to it.
Yeah.
A lot of the natives I've spoken with and have had the chance to work with, they look at it as a physical being, a brother, another tribe, something of that nature. And a long-standing history. If you look at a lot of the Native American carvings, whether it's on a totem pole, they have a Sasquatch on them. On some of them, they have masks where it shows a Sasquatch with whistling lips. They have the many a story of Sasquatch, being even raiding their fish catches and doing stuff like that. So the vast majority of it, I fully accept Sasquatch as a real thing, and most of the natives up here, just kind of they have their thoughts on it. Avoid the Sasquatch, leave gifts. Sometimes, that's their approach. There's certain areas they won't travel in, and there's certain areas where they will avoid if they come across something. So it's one of those things where I've actually learned a lot from a lot of the Native Americans up here that have taught me so much. And many of them are okay with, us non-natives looking into the subject matter, and then some aren't so cool with it. But it's definitely a long-standing history up here, hundreds of years, and the way they look at it is that Sasquatch has been here before, even before them.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think makes the Northwest so conducive to Sasquatch? Because I know there's like pockets around the United States. I know, of course, I live close to Appalachian Mountains, so you have a lot of sightings in the mountainous areas. Do you think it's just because there's such vast stretches of forest, or do you think it's because of the environment, or what are your thoughts?
All the above there. Having lived in Southern California, I used to do a lot of work out in the deserts, and there's even Sasquatch reports out in the deserts of California and elsewhere. And not near as many reports as you see as you travel up further north into, like I said, Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, whatnot. Definitely, up here in Washington where I live, it is, I live in a very temperate area.
Yeah.
We have the Olympic Mountains itself are a rainforest. So you got year-long rain. It rains 9 months out of the year. Everything is green and lush. You have mountains and you have meadows. You have rivers and creeks. These rivers and creeks out here get seasonal salmon runs, a lot of salmon of different, varieties, whether it's, your coho or your pink. You've got loads of salmon come up these creeks. You have loads of mussels on the beaches, clams. And then you get into the interior where it's just lush vegetation, ferns and moss and pine trees and alders and all these different trees. You got all these fungus that grows, all these different mushrooms. And then just the amount of wildlife, elk and deer and bear and mountain lion and grouse. And, it's just a combination, I think, as to why it makes perfect sense that you could have a decent amount of Sasquatch in this area and be a perfect place to survive and thrive. You can get out of the elements real quick based on your transitory travel routes from, say, thousands of feet up to going down, down to the 100, the 200, 300 foot level. You could be following the elk up and down, just mimicking what they do, going from snow down to lush green fields.
Yeah.
And so it is just the perfect environment for something to survive and thrive and stay hidden. I mean, it's some of these hills and mountains are very steep. You got all sorts of ravines and pockets. It doesn't even surprise me that Sasquatch would be able to maneuver these areas and survive so well.
Yeah, I think Bigfoot's the one thing that I get asked about the most. Like I said, my forte is ghost, and I've been a paranormal investigator for over 20 years, diving into the ghost stuff. But when I do conventions and stuff and speaking engagements, that's the biggest thing. Bigfoot's the second biggest thing I get asked about. And they want to know my opinion. I don't know why they want to know my opinion, but they do. And I'm always like, and the first thing I think people go to, well, and a question I've gotten a lot, I'm sure you get this all the time too, is, well, why haven't we found a body? And I tell people, I'm like, well, go out in the woods and try to find a deer carcass.
Right.
Just here, like around the Nashville area. You know, I live in a small town like right outside of Nashville. And we have lots of forest that's untouched. And I'm like, go out and try to find any carcass in the woods. You know, the only time you're going to find a deer carcass is when somebody has hit one on the highway, you know, like, because there's so many scavengers and things that pick it apart and pull it apart. So it only makes sense that, you know, when a Bigfoot dies, that nature would take its course, or even if, you know, we believe that they're really intelligent creatures, you know, maybe they bury their dead.
Right. Yeah, no, all great points there. You know, and when it comes to Sasquatch, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and some people that I think investigate this subject definitely have an opinion. So it's no surprise that you get asked questions. But, you know, when it comes to, I'll speak here in Pacific Northwest. First of all, I don't think there's that. And I won't give you a number, but I don't think there's an incredible amount of Sasquatch. I think they do fine with just in small numbers. You know, if they're anything, and I know I'll probably take some heat for this, but I'm going to compare them to like orangutans just for their social structure, which could be very similar, or it could be more similar to like gorillas. You know, so if they're nomadic in small number, chances of seeing one are very, 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 very slim. You know.
Yeah.
Second of all, when it comes to bones, how many people will come across a bone and not even know what they're looking at in the woods? A ton. So you not only have to come across a bone, you have to be able to recognize that bone. And I personally believe Sasquatch, if they're on their way out, I don't know if they get their own kind bury them or whatnot, but if they're going to pass away, I know me, you know, and I know what dogs and cats do and other animals, they go to the deepest, darkest places because they don't want to be, as they're dying, messed with, eaten alive. They want to die peacefully and disappear.
Right.
And I fully believe Sasquatch on its way out would do that. They don't want to be found. They don't want to be discovered, and they don't want to be messed with by bears or any other predator, let alone man. So they're going to go to the deepest, darkest places. And, you know, I have found bones in the woods, but I literally watched an elk carcass disappear in less than a week.
Yeah.
And we're talking about an animal that can weigh anywhere from, 600 to, like over 1,000 pounds.
Right.
And nature has a wonderful way of making things disappear. And the soil up here with the amount of rainfall we get is pretty acidic. So between animals eating the carcass, dragging it away, the soil and the rain doing its work, the pests, the bugs, and just the fact that I think Sasquatch is a small number and will probably pass away in a deep, dark crevice somewhere, it'd be like winning the lottery, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, and also with the woo stuff, because you're of the opinion, like I am, that it's a flesh and blood creature, like we're talking about. And one of the things I've said to people, because they ask me about, well, what about the supernatural aspect? And I've kind of dove in the ghost world into like time slips. And I tell people, I say, well, if you see a bear in the woods, you don't go poke in the ass to make sure it's really there, right? You just take it that there's a bear in the woods, right? You see it, you go on about your way so you don't get eaten or whatever. And I said, it's the same thing with Sasquatch. Why could there be some sort of time slip with Sasquatch where you may be seeing something replay from the past? And I know it's getting into the esoterica, but
yeah,
you're not going to go up and poke it to make sure it's really there. And maybe that's some of the reason why they can just disappear, or, because a big thing in the ghost world is the stone tape theory. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that its environment is right with quartz and things like that it can kind of record like a VHS or cassette tape does magnetically, and scenes can replay when the conditions are right, kind of like a movie, and you can even see and hear things. And so I think there might be an aspect of that with Bigfoot and the suddenly appearing and disappearing with that. But like I said, let's get into kind of the esoteric.
Yeah. I don't rule anything out because I don't claim to know anything. I'm just I'm really of the opinion, and I am familiar with that theory, but I am of the opinion that people are just generally arrogant. I know I could be arrogant sometimes, but people are arrogant in what they think they observe, they know. And, I've heard people say that bear just disappeared. That deer just disappeared. I'm a hunter. I hunt black-tailed deer, and they call that specific species, which is the only one up in this area, the ghost of the woods, the gray ghost of the woods, because it'll be there and then it'll disappear. Literally. You're like, where did it go?
Yeah.
It's not disappearing. It's just so well adapted to stand still, move through thick stuff. You don't even hear this thing move, these deer. And they can disappear so quick. So up here, when someone tells me, oh, the Sasquatch disappeared, I said, well, did it disappear or did it just go out of your sight and out of your view?
Right.
You know, these things, everybody's always looking up for this 6 to 8 foot tall creature, and they're not looking necessarily way up, and they're not looking on the ground. These things are clever. I've known black-tailed deer to literally belly crawl. It's unheard of, right? But they do it. They're that smart and that adept to their environment. They'll get down and crawl. A deer will do that. Well, Sasquatch will do the same. They're the masters, the absolute masters of their environment.
Right.
And they do leave trace sign. You know, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck. Sasquatch has been reported to cross roads, eat roadkill, raid trash cans, throw rocks, leave hair, leave fecal matter. It all describes to me a living, breathing entity, a creature of some sorts.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, all I need to do is look at the known animals up here, the mountain lion, the bear that can just disappear so quickly. And to think there's many more of them compared to Sasquatch, quite likely, and not as nearly as smart. What's to stop a Sasquatch from being just, you know, the absolute ninja of the woods?
Right. Yeah. Here in Middle Tennessee, we have the TWRA, which is Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency for the state. And they're like, that's the game wardens and all that. And, and it took them 5 years to admit that we had mountain lions back in Middle Tennessee, because they said they had moved out of here. They're in the mountains in East Tennessee, but we didn't have them in Middle Tennessee. And it took, I don't know how many hunters to come forward with their trail cams showing pictures of mountain lions for the TWRA to finally say, okay, we have mountain lions back in Middle Tennessee. And people have been telling them for years that we have black bears moving back into Middle Tennessee. They didn't believe that until there was 2 videos this last summer of 2 separate black bears in downtown Nashville. And so
incredible, right?
Yeah. And so that forced them to say, okay, well, these animals, you know, so it's funny. I find it funny that, you know, they're so reticent to say that these creatures we know exist are around. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that they would deny something like Bigfoot, especially like in smaller populations, like you're saying, you know, that aren't seen as much, but also with bears and mountain lions. I mean, they can be around. You'll never see a mountain lion until they want you to see them or they attack you. It's the same thing here in Middle Tennessee. We have lots of bobcats, but you'll never see one. Rarely do you ever see them, just because they're like you're saying, masters of their environment, and they know how to get around without you seeing them, and how to walk in the woods without you hearing them, unless they want you to know they're there.
Yeah. Unless they make a huge mistake. But the thing is, and I tell people this all the time that are, you know, we have a lot of, I got them on so many big toms, you know, big mountain lions and bear on my cameras. I got loads of them. I actually do see quite frequently a lot of black bear, and then we got a healthy population. And doing some of the remote backpacking hiking I do, I run into black bear quite frequently. But mountain lion's a whole nother story. They're out there. They're watching you. That's what I tell people. I said, they're watching you. They know you're there, and you're not going to see them. But get back to one little thing you brought up about, you know, the Department of Natural Resources and these game wardens and all this. It's also an arrogance too. If they're not involved and they're not in the study, and it's not their trail cam footage, their cell phone footage, their track find, they're probably going to deny it when you got a lot of really good hunters, outdoorsmen, outdoors women. You know, we have the same issue up here with wolves. We do have wolves in Washington. I think there's more than they let off. It's the same thing with grizzlies. We do have grizzlies, not anywhere near the Olympics, but there are grizzlies out here in Washington. I think I've talked to hunters who have come across tracks where there shouldn't be. Same thing with wolves. And so they deny it. These, you know, government employees until they can't deny it. And then they have to open up about it. And, oh yeah, there were wolves found in this area, or the grizzlies had made it to this area. And it's the same thing with Sasquatch.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't they release wolves in Yosemite quite a few years ago to kind of rebuild a pack there?
I believe so. Yeah, they have. I know in that area they do have, and then same thing with Oregon. So they are releasing them. In fact, they're getting ready to release. It's a big debate up here. Grizzlies, even more so in certain areas of Washington, and it's a huge debacle, a huge debate up here because of the ranchers and of course the livestock and the hikers. So that's a big battle up here right now.
Yeah. Well, it's fine. I find it funny that they would think that, okay, well, these wolves, they don't give a shit about your park boundaries. Like they're going to migrate and move. I mean, even down in California, Yosemite, they could have, bred and made their way up further north. Because like you said, there's plenty of prey animals and food. So why wouldn't they, spread out? And one of the things I find fascinating, just kind of a side note, I think it was Yosemite I saw the documentary on about when they re-released the wolves, they kind of reset nature. And all of these streams and things are healthy again because of the trickle-down effect of the wolves taking out like deer and things that were causing erosion and things in the creeks and things. And it's just kind of this huge snowball of nature kind of coming back in its own and healing itself because they put an apex predator back in where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, there's, I'm a big fan of that within reason, definitely. I mean, and it's that pyramid effect you're talking about. Yeah. Because if you let any one species get out of hand, there's another one, and not just species of animals, but also the environment could take a hit. So everything to me is kind of by design. So if you take, say wolves out of one area completely, well, then the deer are probably going to explode, and then that's going to create issues within disease within those species, possibly also within, the plant life could be decimated. So it's a yin to the yang sort of thing, the pyramid effect. And it's important. And those wolves, they do track a lot of them with collars and whatnot, but not every single one. And if you get one male that travels in from a different area that you weren't aware of, and it breeds, it can create its own pack. So it could spiral, and not necessarily in a bad way, but it could definitely spiral, and you're not even aware that there's a pack of wolves here because they're also super intelligent animals.
Yeah. Is it Washington State that actually has a law against hunting Bigfoot?
Yes. Yeah. Stevenson County, I believe that's it, and Skookum. So they actually have a law, and it's been in place for quite many years. I don't believe it's the whole of Washington. I think it's just Stevenson County, maybe a few other counties involved, but also I think it's Tennessee. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't there a reward or something out there, or something to that effect of shooting a Sasquatch or seeing one, or law not to shoot one? I can't remember.
I want to say out in East Tennessee, there's somebody that put a reward out. I don't know of any laws about not shooting one, but I want to say that there was somebody out in East Tennessee that put out a maybe northern Georgia in the Appalachians.
Okay.
Yeah, about putting out a reward for a Sasquatch body.
Yeah. There was something in the news, and it was good. It was months and months ago. I remember seeing something on the news about that out your general way, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. It's interesting with the Appalachian Mountains. It's the most visited park in the United States, and they still deny a lot of things, which is but even during COVID, they still have like 12 million visitors to Smoky Mountains National Park. But and there's all kinds of sightings out there too. And I actually know Matt Pruitt. Oh yeah. Actually, this coming weekend, January 26th, Matt Pruitt will be up here in Washington. We're speaking at the same event. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he's a Nashville guy, and I've had him on the show, and his area of research is northern Georgia and southern eastern Tennessee in the Appalachian Mountains, and so I've talked to him extensively about Appalachian Mountains. But it's interesting out there with the Appalachian Mountains are weird anyway, because it's kind of like Mount Shasta out in California. There's just all this
out by Redding. Yep.
Yeah, there's just all this strange shit that goes on, missing people, weird disappearances, and ghost stories and cryptids and all this craziness. But so with the Olympia project, how did you get involved with that and get kind of knee deep with helping them research out in that area?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. Now I'm helping co-run the Olympic project, but I moved up to Oregon in 2008, and I started doing my own kind of research, and investigation stuff especially around the Mount Hood National Forest, and even the Tillamook National Forest on the coast. And eventually getting really deep into this research, I kind of came to the conclusion, this is, I need to I need to branch out. I need to meet. I hear about all these names, your Cliff Barrickmans, your Derek Randalls, all these guys that run these things, Dr. Meldrums, and all, John Bindernoggles. I can go on and on and on. I said, I gotta start reaching out. At that point in time, I didn't know. I've heard of names. I've had phone conversations with a few people, but I really had no network. I wasn't attached to anybody, not the BFRO, nobody.
Yeah.
And so I went to an event called Hopsquatch. Guy Edwards put on this event years ago called Hopsquatch in downtown Portland. And it was just basically a kind of a beer and brew and talking event held once a month at the Lucky Labrador pub. And investigators and whatnot, enthusiasts would gather there, and there'd be a guest speaker. And I had signed up. Finally, I'd signed up. I had met Cliff Barrickman at another event, and we got to talking, and he was sharing some of his knowledge about the Oregon specifically. And so I got to meet Cliff, but I had yet to meet Derek Randalls, who was the original co-founder of the Olympic Project. And I had signed up to do an expedition with him up in the Olympics, and he was speaking at this Hopsquatch event. So I got to meet him down there at the Hopsquatch event. I got to meet a few other Olympic Project members, and eventually I went on an expedition with Derek, and we hit it off. We hit it off right off the bat, and it wasn't and that was back in 2011, end of 2011, 2012. And it wasn't too long thereafter, he asked me if I'd be interested in joining the Olympic Project. And I've been with them since 2012. And basically Derek Randalls, myself, and David Ellis kind of run the Olympic Project, but we have many, many fantastic researchers. I work really closely with people like Chris Spencer and Rebecca Ann Slick and Todd Hale of the Olympic Project. That's kind of my core little group that we get out and we do a lot of investigations. Research. I shouldn't say investigations. We do a lot of research in the field. We're not really ambulance chasers as far as reports go, unless it's in a vicinity of interest. We're kind of homebodies where we try to learn everything about the one area that we're working in and the animals, the life, the fauna, and all that. But So I got involved that way. Then, eventually Derek asked me if I'd help co-run the organization, and I'm kind of at the helm alongside with like David Ellis. And it's an amazing organization of like-minded individuals from all walks of life. We have academics involved in the Olympic Project. We have laymen, hikers. We have a good group of people. And just like I said, we're all like-minded. We're data-driven. We're about collecting as much data on something that the vast majority of the Olympic Project knows to exist. We do have some skeptics. We do have some people that are just interested because they've had an experience or they've actually looked at the data and the evidence, go, hey, there's something to this. I got to look into it further. But the vast majority of the Olympic Project knows that Sasquatch exists, whether it's usually it's, almost all the time been a sighting or something else. But knowing that we're just about collecting data, as much data so that if Sasquatch is ever proven to exist, we'll have a plethora of that ready, available. So academia, when they eventually catch up as a whole, will be like, they got a kind of a step up, a platform to launch off of.
Yeah, I talked to I think it was J.W. Oker. He wrote The United States of Cryptids, and he's got a chapter in there called The Cryptozoologist's Curse. You were mentioning, academics and scientists, and the cryptozoology curse is if we ever prove any of these creatures exist, then cryptozoology goes away. And so you got people investigating their own demise, I guess is kind of the way that he put it. And I just thought it was interesting take.
It is an interesting take. And I can't say I've thought of it that way. It's interesting. There is truth to that because, and if Sasquatch was ever proven to exist, I don't think anybody could deny the repercussions from that, especially for people that love, if Sasquatch is proven to exist, we're going to have to figure out how do they breed, where do they eat, where do they travel. So that's going to do a lot of stuff to the timber range and the camping and the national parks. But and it will pretty much quench, I guess, cryptozoology as far as Sasquatch research, because you're not going to probably be allowed to do it until, but I don't mind. I'll still do it anyways. You know, I mean, you're going to put a tracking collar on me and follow me. Good luck, you know, but I get it. It's interesting. It's interesting take.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Cause he's like, then it just becomes science. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Never thought about it that way myself. And it's kind of, I thought about it in the terms of like, paranormal investigators like myself, you know, if we ever prove the afterlife exists, well, there goes my hobby. Like, you know.
Well, you know, if you know, I got many interests in the woods. So you take me out of the woods, I'd be very dismayed. But as long as I have my woods time and my camping experiences and all that, then I'll find another hobby. I got plenty of them. I got a 12-year-old daughter that likes to get out in the woods, and I'm an avid hunter. And you know, maybe I'll switch to water cryptids or something. You know,
right? Yeah. So what? I kind of put the cart before the horse, I guess. So what exactly is the Olympic Project?
Yeah, it's basically a group of male and female like-minded individuals that, like I said, come from all walks of life, and like I said, both in academia and your layman. You know, we have a lot of great hunters in the group, a lot of good trackers. Everybody kind of has their own role. That's, you know, we do have affiliates of the Olympic Project. If you look at our website, there's affiliates on there, but there's a core group of us, which includes, you know, like I said, David Ellis of the Olympic Project, Derek Randalls, myself, Todd Hale, Chris Spencer, Rebecca Ann Slick, and a few others. But the vast majority of us are just like-minded, data-driven. We document as much as we can, and specifically about 3 different kind of core areas where we document everything: the wildlife, the weather patterns, finds and no finds. You know, we just got done doing Chris Spencer and of the Olympic Project and Wes Lim of Squatcher Metrics. He's actually from the UK. He's also a data analysis by trade. Wes Lim is, and he and Chris Spencer helped put together this really great report where we recorded every single night in one area for about a year and a half, almost a full solid 2 years, every single night from about 6 in the evening to, you know, 7 in the morning, and set up a spreadsheet and visually went through the audio. I mean, we're talking hours and hours of visually looking at the audio and listening to the audio and identifying through a spectrograph what was going off at certain hours, you know. And if you go to the inhabitsproject.com website, we got a short, it's not the full report up on there, but it's that the full one will be out at some point in time, but it's a good, I forget how many pages it is, but you'll get to see a lot of what we've categorized and discovered about, the nest area in general, where we've cataloged every known animal that we could identify. And then we have the unusual stuff, or the suspect sounds, whether it's percussive, say like wood knocks, or odd whistles, or yells, or whoops. It's actually a really impressive report. I'm very proud of Chris Spencer and with the help of Wes Lim of Squatch Metrics. This project was a real eye-opener for me. And also on the Olympic Project website, Chris Spencer and I did come across a trackway. Chris Spencer did a fantastic job putting this report together. It's for free. You can look at it on the inhabitsproject.com website, where we document the absolute snot out of a trackway find. It was about 8 tracks, and it's a pretty amazing report. So that's kind of what we do. We get out, we do a lot of field investigations, but it's really, I don't know many groups that document as much as we do. And I think the sound audio report that was just completed, and we're still recording in these areas, I think it's one of the best reports from non-academic individuals on the Sasquatch subject that's almost ever been done. And the recorders used were even very expensive models, SM4s. It's a very professional bioacoustical recording unit that professionals use, and we have 3 of them in our possession. So they're crystal clear audio recording units that we upload the SD cards into, like Audacity, and look at the sound recordings visually. So your ears can play tricks on you. Right. But when you're looking at this stuff and comparing it to websites like the Macaulay Library of Sounds, which has probably the biggest data bank of especially North American animals, and you can visually compare on a spectrograph, It's which Chris is just a master of, and so is David Ellis of the Unlimited Project. So, sorry, I kind of rambled on there, but everybody's got a role in the Unlimited Project, and it's a great group of individuals I love working with, and we're very adamant about being detail oriented and following through, and not just jumping to conclusions when it comes to anything Sasquatch or non-Sasquatch related.
Yeah, and I think it takes a healthy dose of skepticism in anything in the paranormal world, supernatural world, to not jump to those conclusions. I mean, I see it all the time in the ghost world. People automatically jump to conclusions because, and you're talking about the audio. It's easy to hear things in audio that you want to hear, and what people don't understand is that we talk a lot in the ghost world about pareidolia, with the way you see an elephant in the clouds, because your brain wants to make sense of things that it doesn't understand. But you can also do that with audio. There's also audio pareidolia, where your brain is trying to make sense of the sounds that it doesn't understand. And there are a lot of animals in the woods that people don't. I mean, I've heard bobcats screaming and sound like a woman screaming for help.
Yeah.
And it seriously sounds like a woman that is saying, please help me.
Yeah.
And just the way that it echoes through the hollow and through the valley and stuff. So yeah, that's awesome to dive deep into that sound analysis. Do y'all have equipment like, recording 24/7? I know I think it's a group in Arkansas that have a spot that they're big on technology with cameras that run 24/7 and things that are researching Bigfoot as well in that area. But do y'all have like a specific area that you just record long term in all the time, or you just pick different areas?
Yeah, real quick, just on the audio aspect, up here in the Pacific Northwest, in a lot of different places around the country, animals can fool you. We have barred owls up here that if you get a cackle of them 3, 4, 5 together, they'll sound just like a bunch of monkeys. It's crazy. As you mentioned, bobcats, mountain lions, elk can make crazy sounds. They can even whistle. So can mountain lions. They can whistle. And I always say this too. I know there's a lot of great hunters and outdoors women and men out there that say, "Oh, I've heard every sound." Well, you know what? You may think you did, but I always compare it to, when you walk into a house, you're walking in your house and you stub your toe, you'll make noises you didn't think you were capable of making. Right? Well, animals are the same way. Depending on what they're experiencing in the woods, they may make a noise you've never heard before based on their experience in the woods, whatever's happening to them. So I just try to keep an open mind, and that's why I think it's visually, when you're reviewing audio, to visually look at it, and it takes practice, and to compare that to known animals, and then have a library of sounds that you can refer back to. But when it comes to having equipment in certain areas, we have 3 main areas we research in. 2 of them we have equipment in currently, and 1 of them we record all year long. We're really moving in the direction of, we have so much data in one specific area. I think it's really good data. It's, hair finds, hand impression finds, foot impression casts, audio, and other things in this area. The one thing, and quite possibly a couple of visual sightings with the eye, we now have, we've had for a while, but we've now obtained a couple of new thermal units that, heat signature units where you pick up heat. We've had a number of really good therms, and over the years we have got some unique stuff on therm, but we're really focusing on getting really good. Now, once again, this won't prove Sasquatch exists. I won't fool myself that way. This is more for in-house and just for another piece to our puzzle and data collection, is to get something on camera or on therm. And I think we're more than likely to get something on therm as we come up with new and inventive ways to record for lengthy periods of time. We're looking at 8 to 9, 10 days of thermal recording nonstop. So if we can get enough of those thermal units into the field in places that we have kind of designated, up in trees and stuff like that. One of the things I like to do is get a tree stand and climb up climbing tree stand and climb up in therm at night from a tree stand. Well, we're going to do that with therms, and we have been experimenting with it. We're looking at things that have great battery life, certain thermal units that can hold enough energy or memory, and we do utilize game cameras, but I'm not a huge fan. I really don't have a huge opinion when it comes to game cameras, but because everybody goes, oh, they don't work and this, that. I just think, once again, it comes down to arrogance. I think, I know where to put a camera to get a bear. I know where to put a camera to get a mountain lion or deer or an elk. That is not an issue for me, but that goes for a lot of decent hunters and explorers and whatnot. It's very arrogant to say, I know where to put a camera to get a Sasquatch. I should have got one on camera. These things, in the area that we're working in, we have evergreen huckleberry, and we have a ground cover called salal. And the salal can get, 2-3 feet off the ground. The huckleberry could be over 9 feet, and it's so thick and dense. To put a camera where I think these things are really maneuvering, I don't think they're heavily using game trails. I think they cross them just like they'll cross a road. You don't get many reports of them walking down an asphalt road. You get them crossing roads. I think it's the same thing with game trails. I think they'll cross them. You'll find one impression, and then they're like, oh, once again, didn't disappear, just went off into the woods. And you have to have a really good eye to track anything that leaves one impression and disappears into the woods. But these things are maneuvering, at least in this area, I believe, through this very thick stuff. And nobody in their right mind is going to put a game camera in the middle of huckleberry, because the chance of getting some on camera is slim. And if you do, it's going to be a blur. And 3, you're going to get 100 shots of brush moving from the wind and this. So I'm not really surprised that we don't get more game camera video and images. I mean, I got one that I think is pretty interesting, but I think if people are going to put game cameras out there, I think your best bet is near a creek or a river. I don't use straps. I usually put mine in stumps. And the reason I love putting them next to creeks and rivers is, people argue that they give off sound, game cameras do, that they smell this and that people they can see the IR. And well, what I love about rivers and creeks is they give off smell, they give off noise, and everything's got to cross a river or creek at some point in time. If you look at the Patterson-Gilman film, which I believe is a real Sasquatch with Patty, that was a creek bed, right? And she was most likely distracted. And there's been a gazillion reports over the years. If you look at where the Sasquatch is in the river or next to a creek, or the person's fishing and a Sasquatch walks up on them, or the person walks up on the Sasquatch, they're surprised on both ends. Why is that? Well, I think the water is a huge distraction. So that's your best bet, I think, to get a Sasquatch on camera. I think if enough people did that in certain areas, we'd have better footage and some footage. And then once again, a lot of that good footage out there is not released. I've seen some really good trail cam photos that will probably never see the light of day, but that's something we're experimenting in some of these areas. Just some of the things we're experimenting with. We got audio up the yin yang, and we'll never stop doing that. But I really think our next approach is so we're not there necessarily with these thermal units, that they're just there doing their own work. We're not even present, because I've done that.
Right.
I've spent nights and nights and nights out in the woods therming, and I have had some success, no doubt about it in my mind. But I think that's just one of our next approaches as far as in an area recording all the time.
Yeah. And I think there's some merit to, like you mentioned, that some people believe that they can see the IR light. And we're finding out that there are a lot of animals that see in full spectrum, which is UV light, IR light, all that. So that would make sense with them kind of avoiding those cameras, like you're saying, with putting a trail cam up with IR, or just an IR camera out recording.
Right.
And with thermal, it's not giving off anything. And so that would make more sense to me to put out thermal, because it's just measuring the heat of everything. It's not putting out any kind of beam of light or anything like that could be detected by whatever animal. Yeah. I mean, that's just the best approach, I believe. Of course, you're dealing with, they're more thermal units are more expensive. They are dropping in price, and you want, we're always looking for quality over quantity. But now that we've got a quantity, and I believe we got the quality, it's a matter of all the dynamics of it. How long can you record for? How long can they be serviced? Is it pouring down rain? All these little things. But we're working out all the kinks, and I know Chris Spencer's been experimenting a ton. I've been doing some experiments, and I think down the road here, we're most likely going to get some pretty cool footage. I really do believe that. Could be wrong, and I'm okay with that. But I think we have a great chance based on
putting our brains together and working on getting some good thermal footage. Won't prove Sasquatch exists, but when we add that to our portfolio of evidence in this one specific area, I think it's going to be pretty dang cool.
Well, I think some of the science, like you're saying, some of it's getting cheaper. I mean, I have a FLIR camera for my cell phone now.
Yeah.
That I use on investigations, and I've actually caught stuff that I normally otherwise wouldn't have. But I think with like environmental DNA getting really popular and getting less expensive to do things like that, and DNA technology getting better and less expensive for normal people like us that can't afford, tens of thousands of dollars for DNA tests and things. I think that's going to make the hunt for Bigfoot in particular a lot more interesting. To get data that people can't explain and to get DNA, they're like, well, this DNA doesn't belong here. And I think not just for Sasquatch, Bigfoot, I think for animals that we think are extinct, that really aren't. With people like, Forrest Galante going out there searching for these animals and things.
Yeah.
And finding that we really don't know. And one of the things I always point to as well is we didn't know that silverback giant gorillas existed until 1930s. And they were just a local legend folklore. And you had all these people who, the indigenous people who were saying, no, I see these all the time, and I think that points to me a lot towards talking about small populations of Bigfoot surviving and hiding. And I've even saw researchers who say that study the silverback gorillas in the jungle, and it's really hard for them to find them, and they know they're there and they know their habits and have studied them. And so, why can we still, and we're still discovering new species every day.
Yeah.
So, we have this arrogance and this ego. You mentioned a few times that we just kind of know everything and we don't, about our own world. We like to think that we're masters of our own world because we have this technology like we're talking on now through a computer, across the country. And we're just not. I think if anything, we've lost touch with nature. And I think Native Americans and indigenous people know way more about nature than we ever will.
Exactly. I agree. I mean, a lot of good points there. And there's two examples I can think of, but speaking of, one's definitely an arrogant kind of, it's got arrogance involved with it. And the other one's just, it's interesting. And the first one I'll talk about real quick is the arrogance of especially Western science. In 2017, the Tapanuli orangutan was discovered in Indonesia, like Sumatra, I believe, area. And the Aborigines there, the natives, were taught that, we know these things are here. We know, they're here. Western science says there's no way, they're not here. They're not here. Well, eventually a skull was brought forward, and then there was an expedition. And in 2017, they were a new species of orangutan that Western science didn't know was around. It absolutely floored them. It's one of the best discoveries in a long time. Amazing discoveries. But there's a quote from Newsweek, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how it goes, but it goes along the lines of, over 100 cumulative years, of, science investigating and thinking they know everything about primates. Here's a new species brought forward. There's only 500 of them. So they've already been put on the endangered list, endangered species list, but where natives said, oh, they're real. And science said no. And then they're proven to be real. And it shows the arrogance. Yeah. I have a friend that works for a zoo. He's a zookeeper here in North America who's been out working with us before. And he told me a story of a buddy of his that he worked with who went overseas to study the Cross River gorilla in Africa. Cross River gorilla. Spent, I forget exactly, it was either 8 to 10 years over there. And in all those years, they could track them by fecal matter. They could track them by nests. But in those 8 to 10 years, he only got 8-second sighting of a Cross River gorilla in that amount of time. 8 seconds.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. So think about that. We already know they are real. We know the Cross River gorilla exists. But here you have a paid, funded expedition to study the Cross River gorilla, and you get 8 seconds in 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So think about that when it comes to Sasquatch. This is where the arrogance comes from. People think, oh, well, we know these exist. Well, yeah, but, when it comes to Sasquatch, science is just, as a whole turns its blind eye on it. But then they don't look at their own funded endeavors that they can't even get a Cross River gorilla on video at least once a month in those 10 years or, once every 5 years. It's crazy, mind boggling.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, there's too much actual physical evidence for Sasquatch, Bigfoot, as opposed to other cryptids for it to be actual real thing. And not to even, we haven't even touched on the hundreds of thousands of reports, across the world of a Sasquatch, Bigfoot type creature. Right. Every culture, has them, and people to this day are still. And you can't throw all of those reports out for misidentification of something else, or things like that. That's just ridiculous to think that there are, like you were saying, with hunters and things going out that know their environment. A lot of those people wouldn't misidentify, a 6 to 8 foot tall ape,
with fingers,
creature.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy.
What are some of your personal experiences that you've had that kind of pushes you a little further towards believing in Bigfoot and Sasquatch?
Oh yeah, I mean, August of 2011, Mount Hood National Forest. I was on a couple of days. I was going out for about 3 to 4 days with some friends in a remote area that I'd never been in. It was a fishing trip. The two buddies I was going out with were just fishermen. They weren't into a Sasquatch, and we did a lot of hiking. We had a 2-night experience, and then on the second night, I actually saw one of these things at about 1:30 in the morning behind our campfire, swaying behind a tree, and there was no mistaking it. It was huge. That trip there, we had a rock thrown at our camp. We had absolutely tremendous knocks, percussives, power knocks that shook the ground, that echoed across the valley, really close to our camp. And I eventually saw one of these things the second night because we were on a fishing trip. And so during the day, we go out hiking and exploring and fishing, and then come back to our camp. And the first night, we had something clacking rocks or clapping its hands, one or the other, approaching our camp and then walking around our camp and then retreating, again, doing that clapping noise, which definitely sounded like rock on rock. And then the second night, it came back about the same time in the morning, that at 1:30 time frame. And this time it escalated. It was stomping around. There could have been more than one of them. And knocks and the rock thrown in our camp. And I finally unzipped my tent, looked around, and there it was, swaying behind a tree, back and forth, and probably saw me. And I couldn't really see its eyes. It was dark enough, but saw the arm, the shoulder, and the hair, and the size of it. And it turned around and left. And
wow,
that's the condensed version, because I was going to give you a couple other stories, but that's what solidified Sasquatch for me. And it also solidified something else eventually. Well, and that was really what propelled me to talk to other investigators and researchers, because I spent, after I got the cojones to get back out there, because it was petrifying experience for me. I never really saw anything out there again, possibly heard some wind knocks, and I decided to investigate even further and get equipment and go back out there. But then I decided I need to talk to other people. And that's how I got involved really with the Olympic project. And then also it taught me that what I was originally investigating and doing my research, I thought I was doing a great job. And then come find out I was pretty horrible. I admit it. I wasn't really taking the best notes back then. I wasn't being observant enough. I was a little too unskeptical.
Yeah.
And that experience too taught me that. What were you doing, Shane? Were you looking for Sasquatch? No, I wasn't. I was being an average person out hiking, exploring. I wasn't doing anything Bigfoot related. You were chopping firewood. Maybe that sounded like a knock, but I wasn't out there yelling for Sasquatch, beating on trees. We just were in a remote area and had disturbed something. And it pretty much, I'm of the opinion, wanted us out of there. And it came back a second night and we got out of there. But it just showed me that, what I thought was research is completely wrong. You can come from a totally different approach. And so that was the one experience I had. And then subsequently, I was in the Tillamook Forest years later with a female researcher I was working with, and got one on therm. I saw it swaying behind the tree, bobbing up and down. And unfortunately, that particular therm I had at the time was a monocular FLIR. Did not record. It was raining outside. I tried putting my cell phone up to it, and it just wasn't working. And eventually I had her grab the therm and watch me walk towards this thing, and it took off. I've had another experience with Derek Randall's where we got 2 of these individuals on therm. We do have it recorded. It was over 300 and some odd yards away. So it's a little difficult to make out, but they're definitely bipedal. I've had experiences where twice now where trees have been pushed over next to our tent, where we've heard whistles and knocks. And don't get me wrong. This is over years and years. This stuff,
right.
99% of the time out in the woods, nothing happens.
Yeah.
I put myself in great spots, but you're looking for a moving needle in a haystack. And more times than not, you're not looking to walk in on them. You're probably going to have them walk in on you if you make yourself interesting and or even predictable. And probably the neatest experience, beside having a tree come down to our camp and a whoop that happened in southwestern Washington with a group of individuals. That was a really good experience. But working in the nest area, Todd Hill and I had in this nest area we've been working on, and I've spoken at length about these nests, and I think a lot of people get sick about hearing about it, but it's just one of the areas where we're not going to leave. It's an amazing thing. And Todd Hill and I and a group of us had been looking for a new set of nests for years, over 4 or 5 years. And finally, Todd Hill and I on a trip out, a camping trip, exploring trip, walked in on something making one of these nests. And though we did not lay eyes on it, it had retreated down into this ravine. We were that close, but we heard it, walking around, breaking stuff. We eventually came and found a couple of different hand impressions, two really nice hand impressions, a partial hand impression, multiple 14-inch tracks, hair, and the huckleberry damage in this area was profound, where the huckleberry was broken, not just a foot off the ground, but sometimes 9 feet off the ground.
Wow.
Once again, no teeth marks, no claw marks, no antler marks, no hoof marks. This was no doubt in our opinion. Even subsequently leaving audio out there and recorded some amazing stuff. The audio it's insane. But we are of the opinion this was a Sasquatch making a nest in the right time of year that we think they're making, end of February into March, which coincides with a seasonal salmon run. So, and they're not made every year in this area. We think they're made every 4 to 5 years. And it's probably just, again, a running hypothesis is that these nests are being made for a birthing scenario or a nursery scenario based on the seasonal salmon runs, based on when the Sasquatch maybe are can give birth. So I mean, there's that's opening a can of worms there. I can go in depth on all that stuff, but it's just that's some of my experiences, and there have been others. I've only had the one sighting other than on Therm, I just know that there'll be, if I stick at this, there'll be more experiences quite possibly if I'm lucky and blessed enough. But I'd love to see one during the daylight.
Yeah.
I've been close. That nest building, it was close. So close. Yeah. But anyways, lots of cool experiences. But these things are out there. They're real. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And people can argue all day what they are. I don't care. We can argue about it. No one's proven anything yet, so I won't claim that I know what they are. I got my ideas, my opinions, but you know what? Until we have more evidence other than just hair and casts and all that, and even video footage, it's probably going to take a body of some sorts to absolutely prove these things exist.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And folks, those are all reasons why Eric doesn't camp. So I don't trust thin tent material to protect me from anything, not just Sasquatch, but bears and all kinds of other matters.
Try cowboy camping. That's a whole nother experience.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I do enjoy the outdoors. I'm a huge rock hound, so I love going looking for crystals and things and combing, river banks and stuff. And I like to hike and things like that, but camping, not my thing, not my deal. Unless, I will glamp. Like if there's a structure, like a cabin or, something like that, I'm good with, or like a RV or something, I'm good with that. But tent camping or cowboy camping, not my deal. But not
understood.
Yeah. It's for some people. It's just not for me. I mean, I grew up a country kid out playing in the woods, building forts and things like that. And I'm not scared of the woods at all, but yeah, it's just something about sleeping in a tent that just, I don't know. I will go chase ghosts in the dark all night in some of the creepiest places, but, and sleep in those places too, but just not out in the woods. But, all right, Shane, thank you so much for coming on today and chatting. I enjoyed the conversation. I love talking about Bigfoot. Maybe that's why people ask me about it all the time, but thanks so much for coming on.
Eric, again, thank you so much. Really, really had a great conversation. Enjoyed my time. Thanks again.
Yeah, and people can find out more about the Olympic Project on the website. I'll put all those in the show notes. And also, they can go check you out on, I know, Small Town Monsters, some of their films you've been in that they have over on YouTube. And then also the Olympic Project has a YouTube over there. Y'all do videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, a couple different places. I've done a few things for like Discovery Channel and Finding Bigfoot and all that. Yeah. But the Small Town Monster stuff is it's awesome. They really do a great job, and they keep it real. And that's the only thing I ask is, if you're going to film with us and you want to, keep it real.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Like I said, all those will be in the show notes. And of course, you can find Shane on all the social medias as well. And also Monster X Radio. You still involved with them? I saw.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. Still doing Monster X Radio.
So you can check him out on Monster X Radio also. So thanks again, Shane. All right, everybody. Y'all have a good day. Stay safe out there. Thank you for listening to The Unseen Paranormal. Join me next Wednesday with a brand new guest. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. This helps more people discover the show. You can connect with me over on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or join us in the Unseen Paranormal Lounge group on Facebook. Until next time, remember, some of the scariest things are unseen. You have come to the end of the line. Whoa. I can feel you as you pass the other side.